Hi everyone, it's Angus Campbell here. It's Sunday the 12th of October 2025. Right, following the recent stable update, let's get into the Fury SS because there's a few things we want to follow up on as part of the shakedown following the run at Cadwell, and also we want to get on top of that so we can get the Fury SS off the bench for now to put the visitor on from Rob before I go away for a bit of a break abroad. So let's get into this, get the battery charging, and we'll start trying to sort a few things out. But we've got a bit of a brain teaser. Right, so a quick reminder of what we found during the last shakedown run. First thing, I'm not happy with the oil pressure. The oil pressure warning light was out when we were running along, but it's coming on tick over, and when the oil gets hot, it's also flickering on at low revs, you know, around 1,000, 1,500. So we need to have a look at that. Second thing is that we're still leaking oil from this cam chain tunnel joint here. There is an O-ring in there, but it's just not tightened down sufficiently. We have tried to address this in the past, tighten things up, but I think what I need to do is retorque the head on this now it's run for a bit, and also at the same time, inside the cam tunnel where you access from the cover here, there's a couple of Phillips, well, crosshead screws inside on either side to tighten it down here, and you just can't, you know, really get enough torque on that to get them really tightened down. So I think it was Matt that suggested maybe we put some cap heads in there, and you might be able to you know, tighten them down a bit more. But obviously we've got to be a bit careful because we're going into aluminium, and I can't remember whether they should be UNC and a nice coarse thread, but I'm not sure, so we need to check that. And then from running it, what we found as well was that first of all, the clutch is slipping, so we've got that to address at some point. And the second thing is that in first gear, moving off, you know, it's too highly geared. So I want to check the sprockets, the front and rear sprockets. So I think it should be 17 front and 50 on the back, teeth wise. And I think I'm pretty sure I've got the right one on the back, but we can check that. But the front one, the engine sprocket, we can check when I do the clutch, but that will be after we investigate the oil pressure side of it, which is what we're going to do first. So the battery's on charge at the minute, just to give it a bit of a fresher. It is a big battery on this for the cold cranking amps, a bit of a traditionalist, so it is lead acid. But while we're doing that, let me just explain to you the oil system on this and what we're actually going to look into. Now, the handbook isn't much use with respect to trying to describe the oil flows on this, because basically it says, you know, it comes down, the oil comes down from the tank to the oil pump, you know, through the filter, round the engine and back. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, so let me try and describe it. So as you can see, two oil lines are here, and the pump, the oil pump, which is a gear pump, is in here. So the oil comes in through the pump, and then from the pump it comes out up here through a ball valve, which is a non-return valve here, which screws in from there, and then into this chamber here, which is where the oil filter sits. then halfway, and it comes up through the bottom, and then halfway down the chamber at the back here is the exit hole where the oil goes into what you call a timing cover here, but actually in here the oil goes into a chamber which goes through the seal into the crank, because it's an end-fed crank, but also off this there's also the oil pressure release valve, and also there's a spray jet in there to spray some of the components to keep everything really covered in oil, including the cam chain drive, etc., on the end of the crank. So it's quite complex. Now, as you can see, we've got the end cap off the oil filter chamber, and that's this here, and the oil pressure warning light, as you can see, is fitted on the end of that. So the first thing to note is that the oil filter is on the feed side, not on the scavenge side of the oil flow. And in fact, if you look in the parts book, the oil filters are optional, if you like. So if we've got oil being fed from the bottom into this chamber, it's fed in the center, up through the center of the oil filter, through the oil filter, and then the pressure is read of the oil that's already gone through the filter. So there are a few things that we can home in on then to basically check what's affecting the oil pressure. The first one obviously is it could be that the gears in the pump have worn. That's one of the original pumps, and when we first fired up this motor in the early days, its first start, and that we were getting fantastic oil pressure, and it was taking ages for it to for the oil pressure warning light to come on after we turned the engine off or stopped the engine. But if that, for some reason, there's a fault with the gears, or they've been, I don't know, they're not hard enough, or worn, or something's happened in that pump, then the pump might not be, pumping enough to give us the pressure. Second thing is the oil getting into the chamber, so there's no issue with something blocking or constricting the small pathway from here into the bottom of the chamber. Remember, that's through the non-return valve as well, so you've got to make sure that's not affecting. But as I say, we haven't changed anything since we first rang the engine, so it's something that's happened in the meantime. The next thing is, are the paper elements okay? They're the originals, not new ones. Are they restricting the oil to a certain extent before it then pressurizes that cavity? And then the final one is, well, is the seal good on the crank feed? And I think so. We've already checked that because we've had this cover off in previous videos, just to make sure that's all right and it's actually sitting on that end okay. And the final thing, obviously, well, since we've been running it, has there been an issue with the big end bearings? Obviously, main bearings aren't. There's no issue there. They're roller stroke ball, but the big ends are plain bearings, and have they, for some reason, prematurely worn? As say, they're originals. Now, I do have new big end bearings, but only standards, I think. So we just need a bit careful. There's no noises coming from the engine. It's very, very quiet. And as I say, if you rev it only slightly, the light goes off. So we are generating pressure. It's just a bit low. Now, I've already done a little bit of fiddling around, hence why we've got this off, because there's a bit of an anomaly in there. So let's, first of all, we'll assume that the oil pump's okay. And the first thing we'll do is, I think we'll check the flow into the oil filter cavity. Maybe perhaps run it, if that's okay, without a filter. And then what we'll do is the next step is, well, there's one thing I've not mentioned, which is a bit an obvious one, and something I possibly hope is wrong, but probably isn't, has that switch gone faulty, but we've got a spare. So that's what we'll probably do. Make sure that we've got a good flow into the oil filter cavity with no filter in it. Perhaps run it without a filter. And then if that's still showing issues, we shall change that switch, and that'll be the second step. First things first though, let's examine this cavity and also the small cavity where the non-return valve sits, and we'll do that with the aid of the old boroscope, and I can show you some of the pictures of that. What am I doing? I'm wandering around, so apologies if you're getting dizzy. I'm just going to show you. The non-return valve is just a specific size ball bearing on a spring, and that's just its cap to sit it in there. So while the battery's charging for a first test, let's get into there, and you might notice something that I noticed straight away, which required some investigation immediately. Oh, and a quick one, I forgot to mention that the other thing we've got to check, obviously, is that the oil is getting in inadequate quantities to the pump through the feed from the tank, which is the black one there, coming down from, there we are, the tank there. Yep, so we can check that out too. Right, let's get on with it. Right, the thing to notice in the oil filter cavity there, if I can get the light right, there we go, at the bottom, is that there are two holes there, one in the centre and one off centre. So when I first saw that, I thought, oh crikey, maybe there's a bit of a blow in the casting, and so oil's just returning straight back into the sump. However, if you then shine the light, now we might need the boroscope for this. Yeah, we probably will. Shining the light, you can just see it there. Shining the light through the aperture for the spring and the ball for the anti-drain valve. There we go. Both holes light up, so both of those holes are going into the same cavity. Now I don't know why that is. It probably means that if any oil is getting past the non-central one, then it's not going through the filter. However, that's not going to affect, in fact it might even improve, the oil pressure, because we know the oil pressure is measured by the oil pressure warning light switch outside the filter, not inside. So let's have a quick look now through the boroscope. So what I can do is, this boroscope's got a light on the end of it, so what I can do is get the camera up there, if we can, and capture the video on the phone. So let me do that now. Firstly, in the small chamber here for the anti-drain valve, two observations. One, the two holes from this cavity clearly go into that one, and secondly, the hole where the oil feeds in past the ball on the anti-drain valve isn't chamfered, so the ball's never going to seal properly. So we will need to possibly, when we put this back together in earnest, is do the usual trick that Triumph used to do in the old days with their piston pumps and ball valves, and that is put the ball in there, put something behind it and give it a clout to get it to seat, because it does sump its oil past that, so that's obviously not working properly anyway. But what we're going to do on now is a couple of things. The first thing is that we'll put some oil in the tank, and we'll see how well it comes through, and it'll drain out of this bottom hole. And then what we'll do is, once we've done that, is we'll also then plug that bottom hole and see how quickly it fills up this cavity just by gravity through the pump. I believe I've seen it do this before, and I think it's okay, but it's something which we can check easily enough. Right, we'll put a good old enamel bowl faithful full. This is reasonably fresh oil. It's just been through the engine a bit. And we'll chuck it into the tank. And then what I'll do is, there we go, bring it back when we start seeing anything there. So I'll time it now, and we'll see how long that takes. I'm pretty sure it won't take too long. I'll bring you back shortly. So that's just coming through there through gravity, and that's coming through the pump. But I'm a bit confused, because going back into there, I started seeing oil in there on, you know, the lower edge of this, because this is the bottom of this is at an angle, but it was coming from a hole halfway down the side, which is the feed out. So I'm a bit confused. Unless it's just taking, you know, the route of least resistance through the pump. Maybe there is something wrong with the pump. Let me just have another think about that. Right, let me just turn the ignition off. Right, I'm a bit more encouraged by that. And let me explain why. Ignition off. We just have to check that, because obviously I haven't got the parking light. That's the next lot. I haven't got the oil pressure warning light switch set up, so I can't use that as an indication of ignition. What I thought I'd do was, as you saw, just spin it over, because we've got oil in it. And there was more oil being pumped, obviously, out of the anti-sump drain valve cavity, and it was definitely being pumped through the bottom channel and not from the hole that's in the side there. So the stuff that was coming through there was just finding the path of least resistance, which I'm a bit surprised about, because that probably means it's actually coming through the cavities in the timing cover. Anyway, I think it's pumping through the right route. I mean, it's not a fast spinner, and the pump was definitely pumping, but obviously at very low revs. But the pump is definitely working. Whether that's useful indication or not, I don't know. But the other thing that we can do is that you can see that there's this cap here, and what we can do is run or turn the engine over with that cap off as well, to make sure the oil's being pumped through to the end feed, which I'm sure it is, to be honest. We don't want to run it like that because we'll have no pressure at all. Yeah, sorry, just thinking out quietly here, to be honest. Right, next move. It's not going to happen today because I'm about to go on leave for a little while. But I think what I'll probably do is button this up, and what we'll do in the next part of this investigation is we'll do two things. Firstly, we'll check how it runs and maybe the pressure with no filter, and the next trick will be to change the oil pressure warning light switch from the end cap. And then what we can also do possibly is, I do have now a oil pressure gauge set with adapters, one of which will fit in the receptacle for that, on the threads for that. Unfortunately, the thread on this, I have no idea. I would love to put a gauge on that, because we'll then know what pressure is going directly into the end of the crank. But I cannot find through any of my adapters that came with the kit, etc., what on earth that thread is. Maybe that's another investigation too. All right, well, we'll leave it there because I'm waffling on a bit. But you can see where we're going with this. We need to take a time and go through this thoroughly. If anybody else has got any thoughts or observations, then let me know, and we'll consider that for the next part, which will be in a little bit in the future. Right, that'll do for now. A bit short and sweet, but yeah, just want to get things sort of moving a little bit in the right direction, and we'll take it from there. Cheers, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for any comments and subscriptions. See you all again soon. Bye-bye.